Hello, Team 4. So, Cheryl, Kimberly, and Kevin. So, what great work you did. This is fantastic job on all sorts of levels. And I'll be talking to you. I'll run through your proposal, I'll run through your slides, and we'll just discuss that for a few minutes. Um, so, clearly, the idea of high functioning autism was a well received idea by Jeff, and I can actually see him implementing it tomorrow. So, great work. His main comment, which is worth thinking about, is that he doesn't see how this would ultimately lead to the BHAG. And yes, he doesn't see how it would ultimately lead to the BHAG. So you might want to think about that as you move forward. And how might Ludique increase its capacity by? And I think that was a great problem statement. I think you did a really good job converging up front on your problem statement so that you knew the whole time you were focused on staff expansion. And I guess I would ask you, in terms of reflection for your next week's paper, that seemed to me from the outside to be something very successful that this team did. How did you achieve that, right? And what was the result? What was the effect? How did you achieve that early stage convergence in order to stay focused? Because many other teams, of course, didn't, and it's a hard thing to do. So let me just go through, I want to go through this, and I think other comments are going to come out as I go through your slides. So actually, for most of your slides, I went through them, I looked at everything you did. I don't have any comments because what a beautiful example. It's sort of like I feel like I'm reading a textbook. It was so well done. And actually, if you want to give me permission to use this for future teams, for future classes, I would love to use your slide deck as an example for future classes. So it's great. Looks really good. One small thing I noticed, which was when you were doing the exploring the vision, you used we instead of Ludique, and you used Ludique elsewhere. And that's just a question whether that has any significance, because it could say that you were really taking that on, or it could have had the impact of leading you to feel like you were taking it on as your own challenge. And I would just be curious about that. So it all looks good. I think my questions come up more when we get later. Okay, yes. Okay, so when I looked at your hits and highlighting, results of hits and highlighting, I'm on this page. What I found interesting here was that when I looked at that, it was clear that starting small until they gain more comfort was an idea that you folks had discussed. And when I read that, your recommendation became clear to me in a way that it hadn't been clear before. So when Jeff commented on, well, why is there's this disparity between this small scale solution and these big scale dreams, that it seems like your analysis was, well, you need to start small because key factor for us is that Jeff is not comfortable abdicating control at this point. If that's key to your analysis, it needs to come out somewhere in here. So, for example, that could mean that it comes out in your rationale for either your problem statement or your big solution, but it needs to come out as part of your analysis that you see starting small as important, or it could come out as in your criteria that that enabling Jeff to build comfort is a key criterion. So I don't have the answer because that's part of your process to figure out how to address this. But it seems to me that if you keep your recommendation as is, that is a key part of your analysis that needs to be brought forward and perhaps be part of your criteria. I also wonder, in terms of the BHAG, whether it would be worthwhile to set a shorter term BHAG, such as by whatever date golf will feel confident with 80% of the client FaceTime not being done by him. I use that only as an example. And again, I think your BHAG still needs work. I don't think it represents where I don't think it's aligned right now with the rest of your proposal. But I leave how to bring it into alignment. I leave that up to you as part of the creative process. Let me keep going. So I thought your ideas were great. I actually thought you had 3 genuine good ideas, and I was really, I would be curious in your paper about where this idea of autism came in, because I have to admit that it seemed like such a strong idea that I was thinking, and then I heard that Kevin has expertise in this area. I was thinking, okay, did they end up building their rationale around this idea that they ultimately wanted to promote? Was this an idea that came up early and then they sort of built everything else in support of this idea? And I was quite pleasantly pleased to see that this really robust process that seemed to have brought you there. So what was the relationship between you having this really good idea? I don't actually see the mention of bringing in someone with autism. And actually what's really interesting is in your matrix you have a unique hiring option. So when you put that in, were you thinking about having this autistic population at that point, or were you thinking something else? And did that come out, did the working with people with autism come out of your transformation process? So be curious to know how that came about. Like, clearly it was a very successful process that brought you there. How did it happen? So all 3 ideas were really good, and you seem to do a good job of developing them. When I look at your matrix, so I'll say off the bat, I'm always suspicious when one option just in every single category is superior to all others, right? Because usually the reason it's called a decision matrix is because a decision is involved, and there's usually trade-offs. So for example, it seems like with hiring employees on the autism spectrum, you're sort of weighing off many of the positives that, it would align with the values, with the potential for how much growth you could achieve using that strategy. So it seems like your decision could then be, okay, well, we decided that even though Jeff can't achieve extensive growth using this strategy alone, because of this other factor that we needed to factor in his comfort level, we nonetheless saw this as the best option, because we are recommending that he start slowly. We saw this as the best option. So let me know if what I'm saying doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is that I don't think your criteria yet are truly indicative of what you are weighing off, and I'd like to see, I'm not sure how you concluded that unique hiring option was so far superior than the other 2 options in every single category. It sort of makes me wonder whether you were weighting towards that process, or whether the other 2 options were not sufficiently developed and were flawed. So think about what to do about that. In although, really strong work, team. Sorry, I just want to reiterate that I do think that your criteria do need to be made more precise. So just rethink that for the final paper tomorrow. Not tomorrow, this weekend, sorry. So this is really strong work. I appreciate all the research that went in, your assessment of the situation, especially given that all this research about employees on the autism spectrum was in addition to all the additional research you did on the case. So great work. And I look forward to reading your paper.